Welcome back to YellowCard Vanguard, where today we'll be continuing our Bang Dream deck highlights. This time we're going to be looking at Hello Happy World, which is widely agreed by a lot of players to be the best band to come out of Bang Dream. They've got a lot of really powerful tools, and we actually made a combo video a while ago showing exactly what the deck is capable of on the finishing turn. So today we'll be going through the entire deck list as a whole, the individual cards, the strengths and the weaknesses of the deck, and exactly what makes this deck so strong. So without further ado, let's just jump straight into it. So as always, we're starting with the core of the deck. So we can see that we're playing 8 draws, 4 crit, 4 heal lineup. Now, draws are questionable because obviously they have low shield value, so it's going to be hard to defend against a lot of attacks. But one of the other strengths of the deck is that it has a lot of really powerful plussing from elsewhere, so you actually have a lot of ways of getting the extra shield value you need from your excess grade 1s, excess grade 2s, and so on and so forth. So you actually make up the deficit quite easily. And beyond that, the reason you want the draw trigger specifically, despite all the strong plussing you have, is that at the end of the day, the combo is very reliant on a few specific pieces, so you need to see those pieces as much as you can, so there's no such thing as too much drawing in this deck. At the same time, you do want to run some crits because it gives you that bit of extra early pressure if they come up, and obviously, you know, 1 card large shield is always nice to have. We then move on to the grade 1 and grade 2 Kokoro. So the grade 1 Kokoro's effect is when it attacks or the attack that it boosted hits, you can look at the top 2 cards of your deck, add a Hello Happy World from there to hand, and the rest goes on the bottom. This is one of the first few pieces of really strong plussing we have. It is definitely just a raw plus, and it's selective plus on top of that. So it's just always nice to have. It's good on both Vanguard and Rearguard, so it's early pressure, and it's what allows the deck to really push early and snowball into its combo. The grade 2 Kokoro's effect is on Vanguard Circle when it's placed. You can look at the top 7 cards of your deck and add a grade 3 Kokoro from there to hand and shuffle. And then the Rearguard effect is when it's played from anywhere, you can then call a card from your hand to Rearguard Circle. The first effect is nice for consistency reasons, and it's actually probably one of the few grade 2s you do want to ride, even though it is part of your combo. Because you only need 1 to get the full 7 attack combo off, and then the Rearguard effect is where the combo gets fueled because it enables your multiple attacks, it can reset your board completely, and it just really helps you extend that a little bit further when you need to. Moving on to the musics, we have 2 copies of the grade 3 Egg Owl Sing a Song. Its effect is, during your battle phase, if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3, whenever a unit is called, that unit gains 10k. So there's a lot of bouncing and calling during the battle phase for this deck, and so that plus 10k when something is called during battle phase really helps you push that extra number, push that extra shield value, go to defensive triggers. And the second effect is what enables your extra 2 attacks at the end of the battle phase, which is at the end of the battle that your Hello Happy World attacked, you can counterblast 1 to call a card from your hand to Rearguard Circle, which when you combine with the ability of stuff to bounce themselves at the end of battle, you can easily reset your attackers. We've got 1 copy of the grade 2 music, which is Sekai Nobi Treasure. Its effect is if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 2 or higher, or your unit front row gains 5k, and once per turn, when your Hello Happy World's attack hits, you can draw a card and then soul charge 1. It's nice to have. It's not exactly amazing, like it's the similar effect to the grade 1 music, just a bit less selective. You play 1 of because if you go first and you're on grade 3, your opponent won't be on grade 3, so the grade 3 music, the plus 10k to when something's called during battle phase, won't go off, so you'd rather have that plus 5k front row constant. That way you at least have some way of pushing, some extra numbers to force a bit of extra shield value, and you still get the plus if something hits. So it's always, you know, it replaces itself at the worst case. The grade 1 music is, I think, probably one of the best ones in the set. Egg Owl Orchestra. The effect is when it's played, you can look at the top 2 cards of your... If your Vanguard is Hello Happy World, you can look at the top 2 cards of your deck. 1 goes to hand, the other 1 goes to soul. Every single word of this effect is incredible. It's look at top 2, add 1, so it's a selective plus, so it helps you either find your combo pieces, it finds your grade 3 ride, it finds your consistency, whatever you need, and then the other card goes to soul. It's not trait restricted. You know, if you need to add a trigger for shield value, you can do that. You know, no matter what the other card is, it will go into soul, and soul becomes a very important card resource for this deck, as you'll see in the combo. So we only show 1 here, but in reality, as you can see in the stack, we play 4 of, because it's a card that you just want to see as much as possible. You want to see it on turn 1, you want to see it on turn 2, arguably you even want to see it on turn 3 if you don't have your combo set up, because it just helps you get a little bit closer to your combo. So that's the core of the deck, and then we'll move on to the main members. So we can see that this is the first deck that isn't trying to actively play 4 copies of everything. You can see we've only got 2 copies of Kaoru. Her effect is, when she attacks, if you've played a Hello Happy World music this turn, you can Soul Blast 1. If you do, your opponent has to intercept wherever they can, and at the end of the battle, she bounces to hand. This is actually incredibly powerful beyond the first glance. It completely destroys Alt Mile, and it also helps you like take up a lot of other matchups, like for example, Pastel Palettes with their back row interceptor, Dark Irregulars with their upcoming back row interceptors. It's the most cost-effective first attack because it bounces itself no matter what, which you have anyway regardless of what you field, but she at least does something as the first attack rather than just being a big beat stick. The next grade 2 is the Hagami. Her effect is simple. When she's played, she gets 10k for the turn. This is really simple and unassuming, but you can see that when combined with the grade 3 music to give you 10k when called during battle phase, this quickly racks up. And in some matchups where you want to go into Force 1 rather than Force 2, stacking her with Force just makes her eventually huge and will take up a lot of guarding pressure from your opponent. The next grade 1 is Canon, who's surprisingly important for the deck. Despite not being a hard plus, she's just a lot of utility and is one of those cards that you really want to see wherever you can. Her effect is, at the end of the battle that she boosted, if you've played a Hello Happy World music this turn, you can bounce her to hand to Soul Charge 1. So she's a booster that turns into a 10k shield that also gives you the Soul Charge. And as we've mentioned, Soul is a really important resource for the deck, and which we'll explain due to the next card, which is the Michelle, who's arguably the glue that holds the deck together. So her effect is, whenever your rearguard Hello Happy World battle attacks, at the end of that battle, you can Soul Blast 1 to bounce that unit. So this applies for anything. So if you attack with the Michelle herself, she can bounce herself to recycle her. If you attack with the Hagami, literally anything on the front row rearguard, after it attacks, Soul Blast 1 to bounce. This means that you can basically pay 1 soul to draw a card, because once you've attacked with your unit, it's not going to attack again unless you call it during battle phase. At the end of your combo, you can still Soul Blast all your pieces, Soul Blast to bounce all your pieces, and have that extra 5k shield, which can really make a difference. Like sure, you gimp your combo the next turn, but at least you're alive. And then Michelle's other effect is the Music Searcher, which we commonly see on the grade 3s of the other clans. So we see it on the Michelle this time, which makes a little bit of flavor sense because obviously Michelle is the songwriter, she's the DJ, she kind of keeps the band together. So that's really important, and so you want to see her as much as you can. Ideally you want to see her on turn 1 because then if you have the Counter Blast, you can then search for Egg Owl Orchestra immediately, and you don't need to wait until grade 3 to set up your consistency pieces. Now the reason the grade 3 doesn't have the Music Searcher effect is because her other effects are way more valuable. So the first effect is that when played, you can search your deck or drop zone for a Michelle and call it to rearguard circle. So in effect, grade 3 kind of does have the music play effect because it searches for the grade 1 which has it, but it's also way better than any other of the grade 3s because it's literally an on-place plus. You on-play, put a Michelle onto the board for free. That is incredibly powerful. It gives you so much consistency because not only do you now have your music searcher online, but the fact that you now have the ability to search for your end of battle Soul Blast bounce gives you the ability to combo no matter what when you're on grade 3. It means you don't have to find the Michelle. All you need is the grade 3 ride and your other 2 grade 2s to combo off. Her other effect is that when she attacks, you can call a Hello Happy World from your hand to rearguard circle if you played the music this turn. So again, this is, as you've seen, if you watch our combo video, you can see how all of this interacts and how you can get 7 attacks big on the Force 2. Real quick mention the Force markers. Our combo video shows you playing Force 2 because Hagami will get to 30k twice during the battle phase. So 30k Force 2s during the battle phase is almost reminiscent of the Messiah decklist. However, there are times where you want to go into Force 1, and that's particularly against MLB, which has an 18k base Vanguard, so your first few attacks won't be hitting without the Force 1 marker. It means that you lose a bit of crit pressure, but in exchange you get pushed slightly better numbers, especially against MLB, which has a tough time shielding a lot of cards anyway because they're sucking their rearguards into Soul. So being able to just outplus them on that front will really make a big difference. There are a few other matchups where you might want to consider Force 1 as well, but generally Force 2 is really good because it just lets you hit with really strong Hagamis all the time. So that's the deck list, and even though I could show you what an ideal turn looks like, we've already covered that in our combo video. Feel free to just watch that to see exactly what the deck can do, but instead I'll show you a few other small lines of play that the deck has that really helps it get going. So one of the first lines of play I'm going to show you is the fact that Michelle being a grade 1 music searcher gives the deck so much more flexibility. So in the cases where you don't draw Egg Owl Orchestra in the first few turns, as long as you get some Counterblast in when you ride grade 2, you'll be able to use Michelle. So we're going to call it here, Counterblast 1, and play this from hand. And when it's played, we can go to the top 2, one goes to hand and the other goes to Soul. So you see we found one of the combo pieces that we need going into the next turn. And even though, we can let this Michelle stay in the front row, get attacked or get retired or whatever, because we have another one to search from the Kokoro, we just Soul Charged one, which means there's one less in the deck. So what you can do is, if you want to save resources, and you really, just need that 10k shield, when you call this cannon here, you can attack, boosted, So for 16, it's not a huge amount, but it's decent enough. Then at the end of the battle, you can use Cannon to Soul Charge 1, and she bounces herself. And then you can Soul Blast that thing you just got to then bounce Michelle. So you see that we've just committed an attack to the board and then gotten the refund for the effective cost of milling 1. It lets you retain resources in the early game so effectively, and you only need 3 to 4 soul to get the full combo off. So using that, not getting that extra soul charge doesn't really make that big of a difference, given that Orchestra also soul charges, you'll get the soul from riding, and there's not much else that costs soul other than spamming Michelle. So now the next line of play I'm going to show you is what happens when you don't draw your full combo and you don't have, all the pieces you need. So the really cool thing about Kokoro Grade 2 is that it's an extender all on its own. Hagami is the payoff. So as long as you see the Kokoro Grade 2, you can still put forward a really strong aggro turn. So you see here that we don't have the Hagami to get the massive booster, but instead we can still do some stuff with this Force 2, as you'll see. So the first thing we're going to do is use the Michelle to search for the Grade 2 order, because we're assuming that we've gone first, so our opponent's not Grade 3. So this becomes the next best order we have. Give that a shuffle. Now what we're going to do here is attack, end of the battle they attacked, Soul Blast 1, bounce, and then we'll attack here for some number with the crit marker, which is great. Then end of battle, the cannon will bounce the Soul Charge, we'll then Soul Blast that to bounce this. Then when our Vanguard attacks, we can call this from hand, and then Kokoro can then reset her booster. And the incredible thing is that cannon's not once per turn, so when you attack after the drive checks, when this attacks, you can then bounce again to Soul Charge, and then Soul Blast that to bounce this to hand as well. So we've only used 1 Soul Blast total this turn, the other 2 bounces have been paid for by the Cannon, who's not once per turn, and we've been able to maintain a relatively good hand size while still putting forward 2 attacks on the Force 2 marker going first. It's really strong, and plus you have the on-hit effect from the Grade 2 music as an extra bonus, plus the 5k front row, so that these attacks are actually kind of large. So you can see that even without the full perfect high roll combo, the deck is still really capable of putting forward a really strong aggression. So as always, we're going to finish off by looking at the deck list as a whole and talking about the options. Hello Happy World is just a really powerful deck overall. It just has a lot of tools. I think it can actually honestly compete with some of the better decks in the format, like say Revon or MLB. The only weakness it has is that it's a slightly reliant on some of its pieces, specifically the Hagami and the Grade 2 Kokoro, but it has all the tools it needs to get there. It has a lot of plussing, even both solid and soft, innate. And at the same time, everything it does, you can always do something. Like, it's not like decks like, say, Messiah or Overlord, where if you don't hit a specific piece, you don't do anything. The worst case scenario is you play a music and you attack with cards and then you bounce them. As long as you can get to Grade 3 ride, the deck will always be able to put forward some form of tricky little play that will do something to its opponent while not costing the deck too many resources. So I'm really not surprised that this has been winning in Japan. I expect to see it a lot more, especially at the local level and the medium-sized event level. It can just really pick up some steam. It doesn't even need to high roll that hard. As you've seen in the combo video, you only need 3 cards to combo off, and it can just kill out of nowhere, and having that Force 2 crit pressure on its big column really helps it with the damage denial. The only thing it doesn't have is board control, so it doesn't have retire, it doesn't have a way of dealing with your opponent if they're snowballing. All you can do is just punch your opponent back harder. So the only other weakness is that because you're reliant on the draw triggers, I think the trigger lineup could be adjusted to maybe 6 crit. I would want to play some number of vanilla draws, just because you'll really want to see these pieces, and soul charging crits with Orchestra is kind of garbage. And like I said, Cannon being able to bounce itself repeatedly, Grade 1 Kokoros being excessive bounces, and all your other Grade 2s bouncing themselves as well, you should theoretically have enough shield value going into like the 2nd or 3rd Grade 3 turn that it's not going to be too much of a concern. And on top of that, the plussing you get from Orchestra and the Grade 1 Kokoro should enable you to guard relatively early, or put forward enough pressure in the early that your opponent will be forced to attack your rear guards a bit more to stop you from, being able to effectively steamroll your lead into a big win. I think the main strengths of the deck is that it has that kill potential out of nowhere. The main weaknesses it has is anything that can disrupt during battle phase, which there's not a lot of, but be aware that, defensive triggers will hurt a little bit, because especially on Force 2, because the Hagami caps out at 30k before triggers, and anything that can prevent your opponent from setting up their combo is really good against Hello Happy World as well. For example, at the moment we have Meg Colony, which doesn't do much, but hopefully the upcoming support of Meg Colony may be able to stop calling, or maybe able to stop standing. Things like that will be really effective. but because it's such a simple line of play of just attack, Soul Blast on bounce, it's really hard to disrupt. The only thing is that the ceiling of the deck is a little bit lower than, say, Messiah or Overlord when they really hit their strides. At the end of the day, you know, across, say, 100 games, it'll win, like, a decent number, but it won't win as quickly, as effectively, or as convincingly as these other top decks. So I wouldn't say it's tier 1, but I definitely think it's a very powerful deck, and it should be very easy to compete with. That's been it from me, Zistral, with YellowCard Vanguard. Hopefully someone's enjoyed this, hopefully you found it useful. We've got a few more coming, there's been a few already. Bang Dream content is something that I really enjoy making, it's one of my favourite series, and so hopefully you guys have enjoyed this as well. If you did like the video, feel free to give us a like on YouTube, subscribe to our channel, check out the rest of our socials down below, and keep watching for the rest of what we make. Once again, thank you for all your support, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time, bye bye.